Going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka UniqueMazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming, and we're back with another episode of At Me, Bro. And I got my man with me, Nelson Blake II. What's up, bro?
How's it going, man? Welcome to the At Me Bro audience. I'm glad you guys have been hitting us up with the feedback. Much appreciated. Looking forward to today's show. What you got for
Definitely.
us, B?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let's take care of some business. You guys, at the bottom of the screen, make sure you take note of the Twitter handle for the At Me Bro Show. It is At Me Bro Show. And don't forget to leave a like as well as to subscribe to the channel. We're still on that mission to get 10,000 cumulative views, and that will then spawn an At Me Bro Show YouTube channel on its own. So that's our goal. But let's jump right into the first topic, which is actually, I don't know what it is. All I know is that Book said he needs some room. So he needs some room to get loose. So I'm gonna step back and let him get loose.
Now, I don't think our older viewers are going to have a problem with this, but I can sympathize with some of our younger viewers who might just not understand, right? Because when I came up, I had never seen Bill Russell dribble a basketball before, right? I saw Wilt on footage from when he was older. I came up at the very tail end of Kareem's career, but they were still showing the fresh highlights of his slightly younger days. And Kareem was great for so long that you could tell Kareem was Kareem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand what it's like when we jump into these discussions about the greatest of all time, and people like, how dare you skip over Bill Russell? He got 11 rings. Now, the joke about it was him and a bunch of chain smokers playing against 7 other teams. Valid discussion that the league was very different. So you can't just look at something like a counting number. When we talk about the greatest and stuff like that, we tend to mean somebody who was the best at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
My brother always comes up with that discussion. There's a difference between the greatest of all time and the best of all time. This long intro is to say, y'all need to stop comparing people to Michael Jordan. Now, if you want to compare their games and say this guy did this like Mike, or he's Michael Jordan-esque in this kind of way, that's fine. But once you start talking about people better than Michael Jordan, stop. Ain't nobody better than Michael Jordan, especially not a guard. Chris Paul said James Harden was the best offensive player he ever seen. That's just a lie. That's just a lie. Chris Paul ain't old enough to have missed all of Michael Jordan's playing career. He saw some of it. And Michael Jordan is hands down much better than James Harden. When Michael Jordan was the best player on the planet, he was the best professional athlete doing anything of any kind. He wasn't just the greatest at basketball. He was the greatest at anything. There was people drawing comics like, man, I wish I was good at drawing as Michael Jordan is at basketball. Like, y'all don't understand. It was not close. And with the rules, and people want to compare like efficiency numbers and shooting percentages, the league was super duper different. The first form of defense against Michael Jordan was literally to flagrant foul him every time he went to the basket. That was how they quote unquote slowed him down. There's no context for a direct comparison. James Harden is not even the best offensive player in the league right now. I don't even know if he's the top 4 off the top of my head. I don't know if he's a top 4 offensive player in the league. He's 4 or 5, maybe, right? Stop it. Stop it. He ain't. He is not as good as Michael Jordan. It is not close. It's not even close.
Here's the thing. I agree with you on this particular subject, like specific subject, but I don't necessarily agree that anybody should be protected from having their all-time greatness challenged.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
The thing I want to specify here is that Michael Jordan was the best, unquestionably, during his reign of terror over the NBA.
Yes.
In fact, people called him the best before he started winning championships. People don't understand that. His team was so trash, and this is something that needs to be said. The Eastern Conference in particular was so great when Michael Jordan was young in the league. Mm-hmm. Boston, Detroit, even Atlanta. You're talking about the Sixers, like high level teams.
Cleveland.
But when we talk about Boston, Detroit, and the Sixers championship teams, guys with championship level talent on their teams, right? So it was very difficult for him with that team to win. And people look at playoff success before them, but even in that moment, everybody was terrified that if he got any good players on his team, it was over. And he got a couple of good players on his team, and it was over, right? But here's the thing that I want to stress. It's okay to ask about LeBron James versus Michael Jordan in some sense, to ask the question, because LeBron James was widely considered the best player in the league. When someone is not hands down above and beyond the best in the league, that automatically disqualifies them from the Michael Jordan comparison, because Michael Jordan was hands down, no discussion, the best player. The second best player in the league was so far below Michael Jordan that it wasn't even funny. You know what I'm saying? So with James Harden, who's in the mix amongst some of the best players in the league, no, he's not better than Michael Jordan. And when it comes to offense, Michael Jordan's offense was honestly so outstanding and ridiculous that people thought it was different than just regular basketball. And that needs to be understood if you didn't grow up watching Michael Jordan. I'm not exaggerating. And I'm a Knicks fan. So Michael Jordan's greatness caused me a great deal of pain when I was young.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm speaking from somebody who literally watched, I would say 85 to 90% of every game Michael Jordan ever played. But I mean, before he went to Washington, I saw less then. Yeah. But I literally saw 85 to 90% of every game that he ever played in his career. So I am a firsthand witness of his greatness, right? And there was no one close at the time. There was no one. The game is different now, and all we can really do is kind of speculate as to what Mike would be in this league now. I mean, in some ways, there's no reason not to know, right?
Yes.
In some way, in terms of the no hand checking and just the leniency that you get on offense now.
And real quick, people think, and I need to interrupt you here.
Yeah.
You made a point that needs to be discussed. And I apologize for the interruption. How he going at me, bro? Usually I let Brian say all his crazy stuff, hang himself, but I just come in and be like, that's wrong, and y'all know it. And we move on to the next topic. But here, you brought up an excellent point, and I have to give that point some room to breathe.
Yeah.
People compare and say there's no way to know. That's not always true. I think when it comes to teams and how teams are built, there's no way to know, because you're talking about guys literally growing up differently, right? Mm-hmm. A young big man who's going to enter the league this year grew up being trained differently than Bill Russell. That's not at all a fair comparison. But in some cases, there's enough overlap that you can see it. And so Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant to LeBron James today, it's not that far. We saw Michael play Kobe a decent amount to know how close their talent level was overall. And the truth of the matter is, in his absolute peak, Kobe Bryant was a little closer to Michael Jordan than people like to say. But you could see the talent level. You saw them play each other. You can see what it was like. Michael Jordan was better than Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was close enough to Michael Jordan to be top 10 greatest player of all time, inarguably. In some people's list, top 5, top 7. Depends on who you talk to, right? Mm-hmm. So we've seen Kobe play against almost every good young player right now. Kobe beat Steph Curry in the playoffs. He beat Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? We've seen him head-to-head with LeBron James over and over and over again. So we can see the transitive properties. And the last thing I add to that is people don't realize that behind the scenes, a 48-year-old Michael Jordan was beating all of the rookies on his team one-on-one in practice. Like, he was still better than them 10 years after retirement. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like comparing Bill Russell to Anthony Davis. It's not the same exact thing.
Well, I mean, I guess my thing is, like I said, with him, there are things that you can tell, right? There are things like, in terms of the amount of space that is allowed now, the lack of physical contact that is allowed with an offensive player. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you allow Michael Jordan to have that much more freedom offensively, the numbers increase. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? So it's easy to say, and I think it's a pretty fair assessment to say, hey, if you let Mike play in this time, he's an even more effective offensive player. Even if the only question about Mike is how does he transition as a three-point shooter, because he was never a great three-point shooter percentage-wise, although in the 95-96 season, he shot over 40% from three-point range.
Right.
So there is some precedence there to
And
say.
also, when it comes to 3-point shooting, your free throw shooting tends to be somewhat indicative of your ability to grow into a 3-point shooter.
There's some aberrations there. There's some outliers
Yeah.
there that isn't consistent with, but for the most part, yes. And the thing of it is that Mike was such a good fundamental shooter. Like the fundamentals of his jump shot, the structure of his shot, the release time, the whole it was too fundamentally correct to assume that if he had and then overall the talent for shooting the basketball.
And
It
the
was
talent for learning skills.
yes, it was too high
Yeah.
to assume that he couldn't become at least a 37-38% three-point shooter if that's the part of the game that he applied. And he's
And
also a
okay,
very high IQ basketball player.
extremely high IQ.
So
Yeah,
Mike was not going to take bad shots.
no.
He wasn't, because we talk a lot about how Kobe took a lot of bad shots, and Kobe did take a lot of bad shots.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike's shots didn't routinely look like Kobe's,
No.
because Mike had a way of beating a double and a triple team in a way where when he let it go, you were like, man, he's kind of open now.
Well, there's three things with Michael that are very different than Kobe. And I think these are the three things that essentially made him a better player for most of his career. Well, there's a fourth thing. I'll name all four. Number one, Michael Jordan was an absolute freak athlete.
Yes.
Kobe was an elite athlete overall in the league, but he wasn't in that 0.0001% of historic athletes, right? Vince Carter jumped higher than Kobe. There were people stronger than Kobe. Kobe had an excellent overall mix of athleticism, but he wasn't like Michael Jordan, where Michael Jordan was basically doing stuff we'd never ever seen before. And if you look at the old footage, there's still stuff that you haven't seen since that Michael Jordan has done. And we like to categorize things in terms of strength, speed, jumping ability. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know everything about the human body. So some of these things we just can't explain the way they look and how plays get made. And Michael Jordan has a lot of unexplainable phenomenon where I'm like, I don't even know what I would call that, but he's the only person who does that. Right. So and a lot of times you can look at it. Often great leapers aren't great dunkers in the NBA because it requires other athletic and mental skills to put you in position to dunk on people. Right. So a guy like Vince Carter is actually more rare than you think. Vince Carter was an excellent dunk contest dunker. He was an excellent outright leaper, and he was an excellent in-game dunk on you dunker.
Yes.
Dunk in traffic dunker. That's not common. Michael Jordan was the total package in that way. The other thing that Michael Jordan had, again, going with his freak athleticism, but a separate category, was very, very large hands.
Yes. That's very big. That's a very, very, very
huge
key
advantage.
part.
Kobe has average hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Michael has extraordinarily large hands and strength in those hands, which allowed him to actually do things that Kobe Bryant physically couldn't do. If Kobe Bryant simply jumped as high as Michael Jordan and had the same size hands, he would be that much closer to Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing, which I think is the most important, is a quality that I ascribe to Dwayne Wade that Kobe did not have, and that's the instinct. Michael Jordan had an animal-like instinct for where to be on the court, how to move his body, how to create space with a defender. Kobe did that all intellectually. Kobe would scientifically break down what he needed to do, learn it step by step, and then execute it over and over and get to a spot where it would always work. And you'll hear every defender say this about Kobe. If you let him get to his spot, you were dead. There was nothing you could do about it. And he spent the whole game getting to his spots. Michael Jordan created space wherever he was and just saw the gaps. He knew if you moved your hips this way, it was time for him to go that way. And he had such great athleticism that once he gained a fraction of an advantage, it exploded into a wide advantage. Dwayne Wade had the same quality. Dwayne Wade could just make plays that people his size aren't supposed to make because Dwayne Wade just knew where to be. I've always said he had much better instincts than Kobe, but Kobe was a better scientist than Dwayne Wade. And then the last thing is health. Michael Jordan, similar to LeBron James, basically never got injured. He had one really big injury for 1 year. Yeah. He had an ankle, I believe it was, or
broke his foot.
Broke his foot. And he was basically out for a whole season. Outside of that, basically never hurt. Mm-hmm. Same thing like LeBron James. Kobe Bryant, and this is my argument for Kobe Bryant that I think people underestimate him. Fully healthy Kobe Bryant didn't last that long. He started taking massive injuries after during the Tom Janovich years on up. And he took serious finger, wrist injuries that took his shooting down. But if you look at the small window of peak Kobe Bryant, it was actually really, really astonishing when he had everything, the athleticism, the skill, but his team was so bad that we didn't get to see it play out the way we should have because they were, quite frankly, I think using him to sell tickets while they were saving money for the future. Yeah. So Michael had the health that allowed him to stay at peak Michael for a very, very long time. You add in a couple of ankle injuries and a hamstring and all this other stuff, and he starts to look a little bit less like what he actually was. But everything came together for Michael.
And the thing of it was Mike had the nagging injuries. Mike had really bad feet. He had tendonitis in his knees, but he never had the catastrophic gotta get surgery type of injuries, except for the broken foot. I will say this. I slightly disagree about Kobe's athleticism. Kobe did some things on the floor that were definitely elite level athleticism. And I'm talking about NBA elite athleticism. I'm talking about, I don't know how many other people that I've ever seen could do this particular singular specific athletic feat. So I would still probably give Mike a slight edge in athleticism. Most of it would be because of physical strength. But in turn, and I think that off of first step, I think Mike's first step was quicker. Mike's first step was something that was not even of the world. I mean, it was phenomenal. That initial quickness, that initial burst, and then on top of that, once like about 3 to 4 years in, when he got the shoulders and he got the physical strength to the point where not only do I have the first step, but I got the shoulder too. And if you hit the back of that shoulder, it's a wrap. It's done. You know, also the hang time. The hang time.
Ridiculous.
The hang time was.
Which they say is a myth.
Yeah, no,
it wasn't no myth. I
watched it every night. The hang time was extraordinarily important. It wasn't just for show. Yeah. Because Mike would literally jump and hang for a second or so longer than the defender and be open before he hit the ground.
That was the old story. If people haven't seen Michael Jordan or weren't around at that time, the story was he would jump, wait for you to drop, and then shoot. Which is why he was always open. That's not the entire story, but it's definitely a significant part.
It's similar. Yeah. I mean, he would literally do that. Like I saw it so many times I can't even count. Like he would drive, somebody would play decent defense. The guy's there and he'd jump, and then the guy's hand would be here at first. And then the guy comes down a little bit. And as soon as he comes down a little bit, and to the ability to shoot shots from distance while or after moving the ball.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody with that skill level, you know, because most people, they go up and wherever they go up is where it's going to be released. They got to release it in a similar slot. Mike would jump, and we're talking about 15 footers. He would jump here, move the ball here, let it go here. I mean, just and while you're in the air, you know, so it was different. It was just different. So
okay, to address your point real quick before we move to the next topic, Kobe's athleticism, like I said, was elite. in terms of overall NBA stuff, but among the elite, you got like Zion Williamson, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. From what I hear and I've seen, Wilt Chamberlain. I don't think Kobe's in that category, is what I'm saying. Yeah, and I do think it makes a difference. I do think it makes a difference that when you're in that category.
And I agree with your part. I agree with your assessment of the instinct versus learned behavior.
Yeah.
Because learned behavior will never be as immediate as instinct. You know, because I don't care how well you learn it. I don't care how much you studied it and how much repetition you've done. You're never going to react as quickly as the person that does it instinctually. You know, so I definitely do agree with that. It's something. It's almost like a running back, right? Certain good running backs see holes. They react. They cut. Their vision is just what it is. They can't tell you why the vision is this. They can't tell you why it's that way.
I think that's more what it is.
Yes.
When we can understand the entire phenomenon, we can replicate it. But going back to my earlier point, some of this stuff we don't understand yet. So when we look at Michael Jordan, we say, well, that's a jump shot, that's a layup, that's jumping ability, that's running ability. But the fact of the matter is, going to your point about running backs, there's probably elements of peripheral vision, touch, extra senses that we don't talk about. There's more than 5 senses. And I'm not talking about psychic woo-woo stuff. I'm talking about
absolutely.
Pain is a sense that, right? Like pain is one of the senses.
Absolutely.
Listen, so there are other elements we haven't broken down yet that might be contributing that aren't getting practiced with the learned behavior. And I think Kobe Bryant is what you get when a human being tries to be Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and when a physically gifted human being tries to be Michael Jordan.
He's as close as a human being can get to Michael. Michael was a different story. And James isn't even as good as Kobe.
James Harden lacks the overall athleticism to be on that level. He because James Harden has the ability to make tough shots. Michael Jordan and even Kobe, but more so Mike, had the ability to make a tough shot not a tough shot anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the difference. You know, and it's the athleticism. I mean, you can D up James Harden and be right there. Yes. And he needs the foul to be called. You can call yourself D'ing up Michael Jordan, and then all of a sudden he's not there anymore.
Right. Exactly.
So therein lies the difference. And James Harden, from percentage wise, is not that much better of a 3-point shooter than Mike was, even though he shoots a lot more. But you know, it kind of is what it is. But yeah,
I'll be weak. I'm rather unique.